There's nothing more sacred to you than the relationship you have with your child. And that can be trampled on accident or on purpose and all sorts of things. And every one of us has problems. This one is the problem. It's unbelievably huge, but every one of us has problems. And when people are in their throes of those problems, it kind of takes me back to that moment where I just say, you have to break through as many walls as you possibly can, because being around other people, connecting to those people, that's the only thing that really kind of helps you keep going. You can't do this by yourself. It's impossible. Decide, okay, I'm going to be Mr. Bold. I'm going to get back out there and try to continue relationships. I mean, the worst thing that I think that most of us have who lost children, the worst thing is for your child to be forgotten. And I think with an exception of a few people, most people forget Lila most of the time. And that's disheartening. It's depressing. And in reality, every time you attempt to take a step in the light, the darkness is right on your heels. And so I'm terrified, especially in the onset of it. I was terrified to share Lila with others, even though I was desperately wanting to, because she was my greatest achievement. And to talk to people about Lila and to talk to her about her little smiles and her cues and my relationship with her and holding her and the feeling of being a father. And then 30 seconds later, they're like, well, where should we go to dinner? It's like, no, you've taken the most sacred and just walked all over it. That's a big one for me. I'd just be like, dude, forget you guys. If you guys can't honor Lila's memory, then I'm out. But then having to stop yourself and say, but it doesn't do me any good, her any good, them any good. Start over, reboot. And then and it's terrifying all over again. And I don't know if that ever stops. It still pisses me off when someone just acts flippantly about Lila or what Christy and I have gone through, or what Christy's going through every day. And then I have to kind of take a deep breath and remind myself that they don't know exactly what it is that we went through or what we're going through. So I've gotten to the point now where I could give a rip about what other people's feelings are. I think one of the biggest problems that we go through that are the people that are in mourning is we're kind of expected to be accountable to other people's feelings, right? I mean, the big quote that you hear from people is, let me know if I can help. And so not only is the person going through what they're going through, but now they've got to try to proactively think of a way for the person to help them. And so you take a step back even further and you say, do they really want to help me? And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But I think that just kind of gain that perspective a little bit of just saying, the most uplifting, most positive thing for me to do is bring all of those emotions into my life that are just redeeming for me and for my family. That's going to give me the biggest reward. And so when someone says, "How many kids do you have?" 4. Tell me about your kids, and and I'll go in briefly. I'll say, these are the 3 right here. Where's your other one? I'll say something usually like, "Oh, she's somewhere else doing something else." And if they ask, I'll say, "Well, she actually passed away." And they'll say they're in the cursory, they'll say sorry, or they'll have forgotten. They're one of those things where you're like, "How did you forget? You were there the day after." But in the end, it's like, they're carrying on with their life and their stresses too. And I can't be responsible for all of their emotions and my emotions. I can only be accountable to my emotions. And so sometimes it sucks having to put you're the one that lost a kiddo, and yet you're the one that's putting your best foot forward. And it takes a lot of calories, a lot of emotional calories you burn, but it's only for the better, only for the better.
What are some ways that people either were showing you good support, or that you can just say to people now, looking back, here are ways that instead of asking me let me know if I can help, here are concrete things that you can do for somebody?
Yeah, so I've got a large group of friends, a large family group that's right here locally, and so we had a lot of support. But we kind of ran into that. We felt like we were running up against a wall a lot, where it was like, man, we need some help. And in this case, sometimes you don't even know what that help is. Like when people would say, we had Ruby, her little sister was born. She was only 9 months old, and people would say, "Well, can we take Ruby?" And you're like, "No way, I'm holding my baby. I want to hold on to her for dear life. And so why would I want you to do that?" But a specific thing that happened to me that really kind of showed me what you could do for someone that's in this case is I've got a couple of my best buddies that I've been best buddies with since like kindergarten. And one day my buddy showed up, and he was started mowing my lawn. And I have a lawnmower. I actually like mowing my lawn. It's very therapeutic. And he was mowing my lawn, and it was irritating. Like, why are you mowing my lawn? You're not even doing it right. And then something hit me. What hit me was is that he was essentially saying what I was dying for. Is that someone would say, "I don't know what you're going through. I don't know how you feel. I don't know what to do, but I want you to know I love you. I'm there for you. What I can do, I will." And so most of the time, because you can't recreate, you can't give me back my daughter. You can't
Right.
answer that problem for me. And so if you can't have that big of an answer, the next worst thing is to have no answer, which is the kind of the normal thing, right? You're
Right.
terrified of doing or saying the wrong thing. So it's just best to I'm going to give them their space. And when was giving someone who was going through hell a lot of space a good idea? We all know it's not a good idea, but almost all of us do it because
Right.
we're terrified of doing or saying the wrong thing. When in reality, the best thing to do is just show them you care in whatever way pops into your head. And sometimes that takes a lot for the person who's not going through that to think again about how they can be there for the person they love. Um, as little as possible or as much as possible. And in the end, doesn't matter because you were just there. My relationship with my buddy, I've been buddies with him since kindergarten, and yet my relationship grew exponentially that day because of that small act of kindness that he decided to show me, which was just magnificent.
And I love that example of because other people talk about like, oh, just having somebody that shows up and listens and doesn't feel like they have to give you advice because there's no advice that anybody can give you. But I love that, like, especially for a man to find here's something I'm going to go mow your lawn or I'm going
Yeah,
to go wash your windows, just something that speaks love. Um, do you feel like too, talking about how some people do it and they say the wrong thing, but to show up is important. Do you feel like the intention behind it makes a difference?
I think it does, and I think that that's the difficulty is as we've gotten. You alluded to this originally, is we've gone a little bit farther down the line than perhaps some of the other families. That those raw emotions, they start to subside a little bit, and so the worst thing that can come out of and I will allude to this as many times as possible. The worst thing you can do to combat negativity is show more negativity. And so if someone has the best intentions, but they just are tripping all over themselves, what good does it do to you to judge them, hold them in contempt, sentence them to a life without you as a friend, a life without your child as a memory, rather than just saying, "Damn it, sorry, I shouldn't swear.
You're
They're
fine.
trying they're trying the best that they possibly can, and we'll come back around to it." And it took me a couple of my really, really best friends all growing up. It took months, and I would say maybe even years for me to come to a spot where I'd say they didn't know what to do, they didn't know how to do anything, but they tried, and that was enough, and they never left me, and we're back, we're okay. Rather than me, writing them off because they didn't do the thing that they couldn't do, right?
Right. And I think that you touched on a really good point though. And I'm going to bring two of the things that you said together. You're talking about how early on you don't have the emotional capability and capacity to do the thinking and feeling for the other people.
Yes,
But then you talked about later looking and saying, "Oh, they tried," but it happened later. So if people are early on in it and you can't deal with finding like I think that's great that you need to meet with positive instead of negative emotion, but if you can't do the
yes.
emotional work to find the good in them, it's okay. Put a pin in it and do it in a year when you have more capacity.
Yes, exactly right. I think, so many of us have gone through grief. I mean, everyone dies, which means everyone who ever loved anybody is going to go through this. And not only does everyone die, but everyone suffers along the way. And it's one of those unspoken realities that I wish that we'd be a
Mhm.
little bit more upfront with. So when Lila passed away, I think that looking back at it, I wished that some of the more strong individuals around me would have come to me and said, you're going to feel a lot of things and you're going to lose control about a lot of things and you're going to have times in your life that feel very dark, and you have to know that that's normal, and just so you know that if you keep on working at it, it's going to be okay. But I think that we're terrified of kind of saying the wrong things, and so we allow ourselves to watch individuals close up into their shells and start to do the worst of things possible to outrun their demons, and it becomes very toxic for those individuals, rather than someone saying, it's okay that you are so mad. It's okay that you're so frustrated, and depression is part of this, and grief and anguish are they're completely normal. But give yourself time. It's going to the darkness is there. Step into the light, and as the darkness comes after you, step farther and keep going. And I feel like there were opportunities for that, and we came to a realization, and thank heavens that I have like the best friend of all time that I just so happen to live with, my wife Chrissy, that we could kind of talk those things out. But those who are single parents, or that are not in a very good relationship, or surrounded by toxicity, someone has got to step up and say, you're going to be okay, and I'm going to be here with you. And I think that that's worth everything in the world.
And I think that it's interesting that you pointed out that even people that have been through grief, it it's hard even for us sometimes to go back in and say somebody that's new to the club.
Yeah, I mean, words are words. Emotions are something different, and so all of a sudden, someone's going through this, and all these emotions come back up in you, and I think one of those pitfalls that I find is I'm trying every day to help somebody out, but then I see individuals like yourself or other people around me that are doing these amazing things that are touching all these people's lives, and I get really frustrated with myself, and I say I should do more. I've volunteered my time with certain things, and I've tried to help certain people, but I need to do more, and then I end up becoming kind of frustrated at it, and then I come back to, but wait a second, those emotions that I feel that made me out of control before, they've never really quite gone away, and so today's battle, my battle, is my battle, and I do what I can. That's the big deal. Do what you can.
Well, and I would say, and I think that you know this, but I definitely want to put it out there, is like you can look at like people like me that like I'm doing something on a more like global level. It's not global by any stretch, but like on a more macro level that's
Yeah,
reaching people. But I also reach people at like more of a surface level. It's not an individual relationship. And I think everybody's called to different things. And so people that aren't called to do what I'm doing, it's what you do in your everyday relationships and how you show up. And people need that even more than they need what I'm providing. And so I think
sure.
that if you do whatever you're called to do wholeheartedly and bring all that you're supposed to it, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yes, I agree.
Is there one thing that you would like to share with people that have not lost a child that you just really wish that they knew or understood?
Well, I would say the thing that probably comes to my mind the most is you are the one that brought this up to us, and this was 7 years ago, and I thought about this almost every day. That there are names for people who lose parents, and there are names for people who lose spouses, but there aren't names for people who lose children, and it's almost symbolic of there's no words to describe what it's like to go through this. And for someone who has not gone through this, I don't think that empathy is really the aim, because you can't put yourself in our shoes. I can't even put myself in the shoes of somebody else who's gone through this. But a sympathetic shoulder at every junction in our lives is the thing that kind of keeps those of us that are really down and out. It keeps us going. And it brings me back to, we had this experience where we came for the fundraiser up to Oregon with you, and I was so taken back with the fact that there were this huge room full of strangers that had no idea what we had gone through, and no idea what we were going through, or what we would go through, but they were so willing to give up their time and their money, and to put themselves in harm's way, essentially, and to come up to us and say that they were impressed with Christie's words, or they were impressed with your actions, or it made them think more about what they could do. And those people's lives are only benefited. And so if you're looking for a way to make your life better, put yourself in harm's way, and really be there for the people in your lives that are suffering. And this isn't even about, at this point, it's not even about losing a child. At this point, it's put yourself in the path of someone who's suffering because of any number of things. And that could be you. You're in the middle of suffering. But isn't it amazing when you forget your problems and you start to help the other people, that you literally do forget your problems.
It's
and,
true.
and it becomes more of a blessing.
Yeah. Puts things in perspective.
Yeah. Greatest gift I've ever received at this point, I would say, is perspective.